We shall continue then. Yeah, so today we will start with vapor pressure of solids and liquid. Yesterday we have finished one part of that is vapor pressure of liquids and liquids. Okay, so today you are going to learn about vapor pressure when you add a solid into a liquid. Okay, so solute you are going to take as a solid and the liquid will be your solvent, okay, to prepare a solution. So this solute you're taking over here, the solid which I said, that is going to be non-volatile, okay. Like for example, sugar, urea, NaCl, these substances when you add to a solvent, okay, they will not evaporate, okay. Non-volatile means the substance which will not evaporate. They will stay there in the solution, okay. So sugar, urea and NaCl, if you are going to add to the water, if you see them, like when you heat them, no, you will observe that only the solvent particles are there, no, they evaporate and go. These solute particles will stay there, okay, at the bottom. You can check with NaCl. At home, if you put NaCl with the water, okay, and you continuously heat that solution. So when you heat, you can see that gases which are going out, they are actually the solvent particles, okay. They are not the solute. At the end you will see one crystalline layer will be formed. When all the solvent has evaporated, one thin layer of the salt will be formed at the bottom, okay. So that you can observe which happens in our daily life. So I said these solute particles, the solid which we are taking, they are non-volatile. So remember, they will not give you any vapor pressure, okay, because their vapors are not formed. So if they don't contribute anything to the vapor pressure, that means the vapor pressure of that particular solid is going to be zero, okay. And the solvent we are going to take as volatile to form the solution. Yeah, they don't come out in the form of vapors, okay. These particles cannot come in the form of vapors. That temperature is not enough, whatever we are supplying. Only the solvent will escape out. Yes, so I have told you non-volatile means a substance which will not evaporate, doesn't evaporate. Okay, so that is what we are discussing now. When you add this solid particles, the non-volatile solute particles to this volatile solvent, then what will be the effect? We are going to see in the vapor pressure. Okay, whether the vapor pressure will increase, whether the vapor pressure will decrease, or will it remain the same. Okay, that is what our discussion is all about. So now let me start with this. So I've taken the pure solvent initially. When you have a pure solvent, once an equilibrium is established, these vapors in this empty space exert a pressure, and that's the vapor pressure. Okay, so you will be having only the vapor pressure of this particular solvent. You will be getting only for this particular solvent, because the entire surface you can see here is occupied only by one kind of a liquid. Okay, so you can see on the surface you have only one kind of molecules. Only they can go into the vapor phase and then they can exert a pressure. Okay, so you are getting only for this particular solvent. Okay, you can see here in the manometer, you can see a measurement which is being shown. Okay, so this is the measurement we are getting for this pure solvent. Now to this we will add the solute. Okay, that is our non-volatile solute. You can see here this yellow marking I have written here. Okay, because the yellow particles I am going to take as a solute. So this we are going to add to this volatile solvent. Okay, so I'm going to add to this. Now when you are adding to this particular solvent, you can see on the right hand side the picture, okay, is being displayed. We have added the solute particles now. Okay, now see properly and remember one point: solute particles are non-volatile now. That means the solute particles will not evaporate. Okay, plus one more thing you observe: on the surface, if you see, now we have certain particles of solute and we have certain particles of solvent, correct? No, entirely the surface is not occupied by the solvent. Some is occupied by the solute particles and some of the places are occupied by the solvent particles. Okay, so the amount of vapors which will be formed, you think it will be same as compared to the before one? Will it be same like the before one? Okay, I'll repeat once again. We have the solute particles which are non-volatile, which we have added here, and you know that they will not evaporate. So if they are not evaporating, they will stay here only. Okay, and some of the places on the surface is occupied by the solute particles. Some will be occupied by the solvent particles. So the amount of places, okay, the solvent particles which they will get will be less, no? Only this this area will be occupied by the solvent. Okay, some are occupied by the solute. So that means the surface area will decrease. Okay, there will be less surface area available for us because of these solute particles. Solute particles are not moving anywhere. They are just standing there. Okay, so they are just there to block the way. Okay, so the amount of space which will be available for the solvent to evaporate, that also will decrease. Correct? No? So when that decreases, the amount of vapor pressure which will be formed, that also will become less. Okay, you will get vapor pressure only for the one solvent, but since there is less surface area, okay, surface area has become less, yeah, then it will lead to less evaporation. Very good, correct. Okay, so then the evaporation which will take place will be less. It's like these particles are blocking the way. So when they block the way, the solvent particle has to struggle. Whoever is present on the surface, only they can come up. Okay, only they can exert the vapor pressure. So the amount of vapor pressure which will be exerted when the solution is being formed, that will be little less than compared to the pure solvent. You can see here measurement also. You can see here it is coming out to be almost 2. Okay, they have just a random measurement. It is 2 atmosphere, and here you can see it is 3 atmosphere because that time there was no block. Okay, they didn't have any block. So easily all the solvent particles could evaporate and go. But in this case, these solute particles which are not evaporating, they are blocking their way. Okay, so the room which is available for the solvent particles to come into this empty space decreases. Okay, because this evaporation process is there. No, it's a surface phenomenon, totally depending on the surface. More the surface available for them, more will be the vapor pressure. Okay, means more the vapors will be formed, more will be the vapor pressure. So now here surface available becomes less. When this less surface is there, less evaporation will happen. When evaporation becomes less, your vapor pressure also will decrease. Okay, so here there is decrease in the vapor pressure. And if you keep adding more and more amount of the solute, if I add more solute to this, more will be the space which will be occupied by the solute particles. Correct? No? Then still the surface area will become less. Then the vapor pressure again will go down. Okay. So understanding, I hope you are able to understand this point. When I add more amount of the solute particles comes and blocks the way. Okay. So when they come and block the way, these solvent particles will not get enough space to evaporate. So less number of vapors will be formed above the solution. Okay. So vapor pressure is going to decrease. So remember, there is decrease in the vapor pressure of the solvent depending on how much quantity of the non-volatile solute you are going to add. We are not going to discuss the chemical nature of it because this is totally a physical process. Okay, we are discussing only the physical quantity here. Okay, we are not going to discuss the chemical nature of these solute particles. So more and more amount of the quantity of the non-volatile solute you add, less number of space will be available and the vapor pressure will automatically decrease. Okay, so there is decrease. I believe this much is clear to everybody. Yes, so now we can apply Raoult's law and we can find out what is the pressure exerted by this particular solvent. Okay, so you know, according to the Raoult's law, that the pressure exerted by that particular solvent is directly proportional to the mole fraction. Okay, so here I can write P1. P1 we are taking as that particular solvent. So P1, you remove the proportionality sign, no? And when you remove the proportionality sign, we put a constant, and you know that P1 naught is taken as a constant, which we have done yesterday. Okay, so we will get this relationship P1 is equal to P1 naught into X1, where you know P1 is the vapor pressure of the solution here. Okay, and then we have next one, X1 is a mole fraction, and this should be the solution. Okay, solution and solvent, it is same because you know here now it doesn't have any solute particles present. Okay, here it will be same because you know solute particles have not gone into the vapor phase. So if you're talking about the whole solution or if you're talking only about the solvent, that will come out as same. Okay, otherwise P1 is the vapor pressure of the solution here. It is same. Okay, here it comes out to be same, not in all the case. So now here P1 naught is the vapor pressure of the pure solvent. Okay, then we can calculate the total pressure. P total is equal to P1 plus P2. If I calculate the total pressure, see now in this case, P1 value we will get. No, P1 is P1 not into X1. What about P2? P2, these are the solute particles. And you know, if you want to calculate the vapor pressure of this solute particles, you should have the vapors of the solute. And there is no vapors of the solute being formed to exert a pressure. So this whole value will come out as 0. Okay, there is no value. We can't get any P2 value here because there is no vapors being formed for that particular solute particles. Okay, so we will not have this. So P total, whatever total pressure you are going to get for the solution, okay, this P total for the solution what we are getting, that is actually equal to whatever we have got for the solvent, correct? No, that's what I said that time. P total for the solution and solvent, it comes out to be same in this case when the solute particles doesn't form any vapors, when they are non-volatile solute, since they don't go in the vapor phase, whatever you are getting for the solvent, same answer, okay, you will get for the solution. Okay, so here P1 can be taken as vapor pressure of the solution because we don't have any solute particles being present. Okay, I believe this much is clear to everyone how we have calculated. We have just applied the Raoult's law first for the solvent. Okay, and if you want to calculate what is the vapor pressure exerted by these solvent particles, you should apply the Raoult's law, which says that the vapor pressure is directly proportional to the mole fraction. Then we remove the proportionality sign by putting a constant, and we wrote that is equal to P1 naught into X. Okay, that is a mole fraction. And then to calculate the total pressure, why I have not written for P2? Because you know P2 is a non-volatile solute, so there is no point because there are no vapors being formed. We don't have any P2 naught value. P2 naught value is 0. So 0 into that mole fraction will give you P2 value as 0 itself. Okay, so when you calculate the total pressure of this particular solution, combining P1 and P2, you will get P1 value because they are volatile. P2 value will come out as 0. Okay, so whatever answer you are getting for the vapor pressure of the solvent, same is the answer for the vapor pressure of the solution. Okay, now we'll see the graphical representation of this. So I've taken, see here, vapor pressure on the y-axis and we have mole fraction on the x-axis. So only one mole fraction is considered, that is of the solvent, because you have seen only solvent is volatile in nature. So only they will contribute for the vapor pressure, correct? No? So if you want this vapor pressure answer, you will get only for the solvent which is going to vaporize. So we have plotted only one, okay? And you can see the value ranging from, this is your x value starting from 0 to x value is equal to 1, because that is the maximum range for the mole fraction. Mole fraction can either be 0 or the maximum mole fraction we can have. Okay, if you want all the 100% value, then that's 1, no? Because you are calculating mole fraction out of 1. So x value is equal to 1 is over here, okay? And in this point, you will have all the 100% molecules of the solvent, okay? And in this stage, your solvent molecules can be 0, okay, almost approaching to 0, where you don't have any solvent molecules present. Majority will be the solute particles. In that case, here x value will become 0, and if you have only the solvent particles, then it will be x is equal to 1. That means 100% is only the solvent. There is no other impurity present, okay? So when you are plotting the graph, initially if you have taken only that solvent particle, okay, like this, I had shown you that picture where initially we had only the vapor pressure of the solvent when we have not added any of the solute particles. Okay, in that case it will be maximum, so it will come on this line. Okay, I am taking over here because x value is equal to 1 is here. So then maximum value you will have for the vapor pressure of the solvent. Yes, correct. It will be higher initially, correct? No, initially it will be higher. If you are going from this side, then it will increase. Okay, if you are adding the solvent more and more, then it will increase. Otherwise, on this side where I have x value is equal to 1, it will be 1. And slowly when you introduce your solute particle, okay, what will happen when you add little bit of solute particle like yesterday, okay, but we are showing only 1 for the solvent. When I add the solute particles, you know, little amount of the vapor pressure will decrease. Then I will get less mole fraction, no, for the solvent. Again, if I add still more solute particle, then still it will become less. then again it will start decreasing. When I add more and more amount of the solute particles, because the surface area gets occupied by the solute particle, less amount of vapors will go into the empty space. So vapor pressure will start decreasing. So you can see when you completely add more amount of the solute particles, okay, you can see that it is declining over here. Okay, it is decreasing. You can see the slope is going in a downward direction. Okay, so if you have almost more of the solute particles then compared to the solvent, then it can approach the zero value. Okay, means if you have more amount of the solute then compared to the solvent, then it will keep decreasing like that. Okay, so you get only one graph. We are not having another plot here because solute particles doesn't contribute anything for the vapor pressure. So I don't have the other side of it. When solute particles are added, mole fraction of the solvent will decrease. It will decrease. Okay, it has to decrease because solute particles are also present here. So initially you can see here in the graph, okay, when I had only the pure solvent, I had maximum mole fraction. Okay, see this side. When I had only the solvent particles, then 100% was only because the vapor pressure, okay, 100% vapor pressure was only because of the solvent particles. Then we added solute. When you added solute, some space was occupied by the solute. Okay, then there will be block. So when they get blocked here, the vapor pressure will decrease. Yes, okay, I believe it is clear. So vapor pressure is decreasing, so you can see that graph goes downwards, okay, like this. Yeah, now let's see the difference. I have just put the difference between the Raoult's law and Henry's law. Okay, now both the laws we have finished, correct? No, so what was the similarity and the difference? Both we have to discuss. So let's start with the similarity you have found between the Raoult's law and Henry's law. It's almost similar, correct? No? And remember, first thing is these laws are applicable for the volatile component of the solution. Okay, like here you have seen Raoult's law is applicable when you have the solvent which are volatile. Okay, if you have two liquids which are volatile, there you can apply the Raoult's law. Okay, because they will be further going to the vapor phase and then they exert the pressure. Okay, so it is applicable. And Henry's law you have seen where we have gas as a solute particle and then you are calculating how much is a mole fraction and then the pressure exerted, partial pressure exerted by those gases. So both of them gases are volatile in nature. No, so both of them are applicable only for the volatile component in the solution. Second one, now remember the relationship. Yes, very good. Yeah, that is the second similarities. Yes, very good. Correct. So here you have seen Henry's law. In the case of Henry's law, we have got partial pressure directly proportional to the mole fraction. And here also partial pressure is directly proportional to the mole fraction. Then we remove the proportionality sign. Correct, no? We removed this in case of Henry's. I'll write here H. And this is for Raoult's law. Okay, and here we have removed that proportionality sign by putting a constant, that is Henry's constant KH into X. Here we have removed the proportionality sign by putting the constant, that is, okay, whatever the component is there pure vapor pressure you will get. So I will just write P naught into X. Okay, so this was another similarity. Vapor pressure, you have seen in both the case, vapor pressure of the component is directly proportional to the mole fraction of that particular component. Okay, so that was another similarity. What was the difference you have found? Difference is this itself, that constant value. Okay, this is constant value. Now in case of Henry's, you have got the proportionality constant as KH, experimentally determined value it is. And then here in case of Raoult's law, you have got vapor pressure of the pure component as the proportionality constant. That's the difference, okay, between Raoult's law and Henry's law. Yes, next topic which I'm going to discuss, okay, very important from your exam point of view also, that is ideal and non-ideal solution. Okay, we are going to discuss ideal solution and non-ideal solution. You can mark this as important. Okay, it can be asked as a difference for, they ask around for 3 marks. Okay, so very important topic. Now this ideal and non-ideal solution, okay, based on what parameters are we going to discuss that a particular solution is going to be ideal and they are going to be non-ideal? So I will list those parameters, then I will discuss each one in detail. Okay, so ideal and non-ideal for both. Okay, so first thing, first parameter which decides whether the solution is ideal or non-ideal, that is a law what you have learned. Okay, Rawls law. So if you see that a particular solution obeys Rawls law, that means it will be ideal. If they don't obey Rawls law, then that will come under a non-ideal category. You have learned about ideal gas and non-ideal gas last year, if you are able to recall. Okay, that was in terms of gases. Now we are discussing in terms of solution. Okay, so if a solution means when you have two liquids mixed together, okay, so when they are mixed together, if they obey the Rawls law, now, what was that Rawls law? Like if I take component, first component as A, then I will get P naught of A into X, correct? No, that's mole fraction. And if I have second component PB, PB naught into X. Okay, so this is Rawls law. And when you add this together, PA plus PB, you will get one answer. Okay, so when you get this answer, that will be the like theoretical one. Okay, theoretical one you can calculate. No, if you know the mole fraction, anyways the vapor pressure of the pure component is going to remain constant itself. Okay, if you know the mole fraction of one component and when you multiply with the another component, you will get Pa value. Okay, same thing if you do with the second component also. If you know the vapor pressure of the pure component of the second component and you multiply with the mole fraction, you will get Pb value. When you add them together, you will get the total pressure. Okay, so that will be the theoretical one. And experimentally, you can put two liquids. Okay, you take A and B liquid, put them together and measure the total pressure exerted by them. Okay, so here you will get the experimental value. So if your experimental value matches with the theoretical value, that means they are obeying the law. Okay, Rawls law is being obeyed. So if you get those two value matching with each other, okay, whatever you are doing theoretically, okay, it comes out to be equal as experimental. That is observed one. Okay, experimental is the observed value. If those two values come out to be equal, that means they obey the law. Okay, they are perfect. Whatever we are expecting, same thing they are doing it. Okay, like how we say, no, ideal condition means what? They are perfect, they obey everything. Okay, like Sant Sadhu types who will do everything in every condition, they obey that. Okay, but if they don't obey, then they will come under non-ideal condition. Okay, so this is one law which you need to keep in mind based on the first parameter which decides whether the solution is ideal or non-ideal. Okay, second parameter which we decide is enthalpy. Enthalpy of the solution. Okay, enthalpy change, basically enthalpy of the solution. Okay, in thermodynamic you have studied about enthalpy. Enthalpy is the heat change. You are measuring whether this particular liquids, when they are mixed together, will there be any heat change? Okay, now three things can happen, correct? No, either the heat change will come out as 0 or you may get a positive answer for it. Okay, enthalpy change. Endothermic and exothermic reactions you have learned. Okay, so either you can get a positive change or you may expect a negative change happening. Okay, so here either your value can come out as 0 or you may get a positive value for it or you may get a negative value for it. Okay, so now here these are the three values which are possible. So enthalpy change we have to discuss. In detail I'll be telling you. Now I'm just listing the parameter. Then third parameter is you have to see the volume change. Okay, volume change of the solution. Means when you take two liquid and mix them together, whether you get the same volume for the solution or either there will be decrease or increase in the volume. Three things can again happen. Okay, you may not get any change. That means either it will be 0 or you may get extra value for it. Okay, positive value I can say, or you may get less than whatever you have expected, negative value. So again, three things are possible here. Volume change can happen. So these are the three things which will happen when the two solutions are mixed together. And the last one is the force of interaction. Force of interaction between them. This is basically the reason why the solution can show the different behavior. Okay, so force of interaction between them. So these four parameters you have to learn under ideal and non-ideal. Okay, so I will start with the first one, ideal. I will start with the ideal solution. So just now I told you, ideal solution means the one which will obey Raoult's law over the entire range of concentration. Means at any concentration you mix this two liquid, they should show you the same behavior as they were showing in their individual components. Okay, so when you are mixing, when I have A component and I have B component, okay, so these are the two liquids, separately they were there. Okay, here you had only A kind of a liquid and this side you had B kind of a liquid. Now when you are mixing and forming the AB, okay, when you are forming the AB solution, and in this case if they obey the Raoult's law, then at any concentration you're mixing, okay, then we call them as ideal solution. So in this case, I said your P total value which you are observing through experiment, that will come out as P total value theoretical. Okay, so now here theoretical value I told you how to find out. Like if I have now here P total, if you have to find out, you need PA and PB value, correct? No, so PA you can find out like this, P naught of A into the mole fraction, and PB can be found out PB naught into the mole fraction. Okay, so when you add both of their values, if you know mole fraction and you know the vapor pressure of that solvent, you add them, you will get the total. Okay, that will be theoretical. So you'll get one answer. Then experimentally how we are doing, see I have displayed here. Experimentally we will take that liquid, both the liquids will come here. Okay, A and B liquid, we will mix them together, initial condition. So when you allow them, after some time they will come out in the form of their vapors. Okay, initially we'll see that the vapor pressure slowly it will be increasing, and then after some times when they attain the equilibrium, that time you can see here this mercury is there, no, it will not change, it will remain constant. Okay, initially you can see that the movement of the mercury, okay, first this is in the initial condition, slowly you can see there is movement of this mercury liquid which is taking place, and after some time it remains constant. So when they remain constant, that time the total pressure is being calculated. Okay, so that time you'll get one value. So then if that value matches with whatever you have calculated and kept, that means they are obeying the law. Okay, Raoult's law is being obeyed. Then those solutions will be called as ideal solution. Okay, I believe you are able to understand what are ideal solution. If your theoretical value comes out to be equal to the observed value, then those solution is called as ideal solution. At any concentration if you do this, okay, you should get the same answer. Then that is ideal.